Hey, everybody, welcome to the Messy Middle. I'm Anita Anello, your host, and I have my new friend, Jess Sato, on with me. I'm so excited. She comes to us from Southern Colorado. We were just getting to know each other. And just like every single episode, every time we record, ladies and gentlemen, as you hear Jess speak today, we're going to talk about like corporate life and family life and business life. And as entrepreneurs, when we know that we have a deep desire, like a burning desire to go on mission and to share with the world something that helps them and sets them free and also helps our own household, that's just going to like barely scratch the surface of what we're going to talk about today. So welcome, Jess. I'm so excited to have you here. I just love these conversations. It's so much fun podcasting and getting to know people. And I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, like in minutes, my heart is just so overwhelmed with joy to have Jess with us here today. So thank you for being with us. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and we can get going on the episode.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. You're right. Like it was like instant gelling when we just started that chatter. As Anita said, I'm Jess Sato, and I am passionate about helping women globally use their unique skills, expertise, and their voices to create opportunities for themselves and for others. And in many cases, that's through entrepreneurship, but it doesn't always have to be.
Yeah.
And so I primarily support smart, professional, former corporate women who have turned entrepreneur and who are building, I like to call them social impact style businesses or mission driven businesses, and really help them focus on identifying their big idea and then using that as part of their competitive advantage to increase visibility. And over the course of that, obviously create real impact in the world.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So, can we dive a little bit deeper in what took you from the corporate space into the social impact space? That phrase is just, it's like ringing through my ears because I feel like you just open up my eyes to a complete and utter awareness in a whole new way to what you're doing and how you're helping people and what that really means for us. And really frame the conversation around if I have a desire that's been inside me, maybe for years, to do something bigger, and it's so much bigger than myself. And let me just frame it first. Yes, let's take care of our families. Yes, let's have profitable business. Yes, let's make an impact here locally. But what you're talking about, Jess, is bigger than that. So can you unpack that for us a little bit as we get started here? And then we'll go from there.
Yeah, no, I love this because I think you're right. Many of us have this thing that sits inside of us, whether it's just a desire to serve in a local capacity. For some of us, it's a bigger, more missional capacity. For others, it's really just how can I put my time, energy, talents to work? And I grew up in the corporate world. I was in corporate aerospace for many years and saw the benefits of being able to pour into other human beings. I was in the leadership development space there and left mostly because I needed more flexibility. My husband was traveling all the time and we had two young kids. We had no family where we lived. And I just wanted something different. And fast forward, I did corporate consulting, was working primarily with big corporations, and then shifted to working with entrepreneurs. And over the course of the last, I'd say 6 or 7 years, I've seen the work within that entrepreneurial community shift. I think like most of us, I started out doing and working with the kinds of people that I had always worked with. And that was for me, corporate women. And over time, though, even in my own business, I started to notice that something felt like it was missing. Ooh. It was like I had built this business. It was very successful, but it felt like it was missing a deeper purpose. There's just so much information in the ecosystem about make more money. And I am all over that. Like we have to have profitable, successful businesses, as you said, but that deeper thing was missing. And the more I dug into it, the more I realized like we can, and businesses are uniquely positioned to do good in the world, right? Governments are doing things and they have a lot of capacity. Nonprofit organizations, non-governmental organizations have a different set of capacities. And then there's business, and business fits uniquely into that larger system. And the more I dug into that, the more I realized, wow, what if I used my business more intentionally to address issues that I saw or am seeing in either my local community or a larger global context.
Yeah.
And I started talking about this more and more. And then I realized, wow, this is actually a thing.
Yeah.
It's not just like a random idea I had.
Right.
There are loads of companies in the social impact space. And interestingly enough, I found there was a little bit of a disconnect between what I was saying and calling social impact and what other people call themselves. And that's an ongoing challenge within this space. But I would say just in general, social impact really is about using your business as a tool to create impact on some kind of social issue or challenge that we're facing, whether that's poverty, homelessness, drug and alcohol addiction, fill in the blank on what this could be. And it could be more quote unquote secular, could be more faith-based, that runs the whole gamut here.
We like to say with our clients is, can you imagine if you had your business and you had, when you, like I specialize in helping people create high ticket offers and deliver those through virtual events. Can you imagine if that was the tool that can actually then feed back into maybe nonprofit work or missional work or serving my community, serving a global organization, serving just something that's on my heart. I believe that all of us, we have something that we see in the world that we say to ourselves or we say to our family, you know what, that's just not right. Like I grew up in a household that had a lot of abuse. So I can walk around neighborhoods and I can sometimes feel the tension that goes on between marriages and with kids, and my heart will break for these kinds of circumstances because I experienced a lot of that growing up. But, and my husband will be like, what's going on? We'll be on a walk and be like, and I was like, I'm feeling what's happening in these houses as we walk by them. And he's learned to know that it's just because my heart is to be able to serve and help and pull people out of those circumstances. And as we walk by, pray for those houses and be like, God, can you just set them free? Because I just like, those are the things that affect me when I see all different forms of abuse. Those are the ones that really get my heart. And I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I love that. I love what you're talking about, because as we take this idea that in our businesses, we can actually go out and serve in other ways. Like, here's some other cool things. Like the Bible even tells us, yes, go take care of your household, but then go take care of other things too. And specifically, by the way, in that order, if you're not familiar with the word of God, that's totally fine. But I just want to encourage you. Scripture even encourages us, yes, take care of your household first, and then go out and do some stuff for other people too. And we know this, right? We all have these areas in our, maybe I'll just rephrase myself. If we're all like well-adjusted humans, mature humans that say, I've gone through some stuff and I want to help other people overcome those stuff that now I have freedom in my life from, then usually we're taking that and then we're doing something positive in the world because of that, right? Now, maybe somebody's listening and they're like, Anita, I'm not that way. Maybe you're still in the middle of your stuff. And I'm so sorry if you are and you need some help, let's get you some help. But most of the times, many times, what I find as socially responsible people, mature adults, once we overcome the stuff, then now my heart is like for this little people group over here, or maybe this big people group. And because we've overcome and we know how difficult that is, then that's freedom. It's freedom to be able to say, my heart cries out for this group of people, and that therefore I want to help them as well.
And that's the beautiful thing about this. When you think about impact work, we get to decide based on the thing that's important to us. Like in my case, I care a lot about menstrual equity and making sure that women and girls have access to the supplies, the education, the sanitation, et cetera, that they need to do the thing that is part of a very natural part of our bodies. Right. And there are many places, not just globally, but here in the United States, where women don't have access, girls don't have access. And the ripple effect of not being able to go to school, not being able to go to work, not being able to generate income for your family. There's a whole ripple effect. That's what's important to me. And abuse is important to you. And I think as entrepreneurs, it doesn't just have to be about building a successful business and making money. It gets to be both pieces. And interestingly enough, it's deeply compelling to our clients, right? Our clients are actually drawn to being a part of something bigger than themselves, right? If you have the option to compare two businesses that basically do the same thing, and one is deeply aligned with you on a values perspective, a missional perspective, what have you, you're going to choose that business every single time, right? So there's purpose-oriented reasons, and then there's actual business reasons why really doing the work to figure out like what is the impact that you want your business to make that will serve really well over the long term.
Oh, I love this. I'm getting so excited as we're talking here. It's just totally opening up my mind to all sorts of new ideas. That's awesome. Okay, let's talk about when we were getting to know one another. We were talking about what you said to me like this, and I made some notes here, so I'm going to look at this real quick. Like this, maybe we'll take the conversation with a little bit of this, what I call this God-sized idea inside of us, reminding us. And then you mentioned a big word about compartment. Let's maybe break that down a little bit. And then maybe transition over to what you do. One of your, I'm sure, specialties, your secret sauce is being able to coach people better in speaking environments. So what was going on inside of you when you had said, hey, I had this job over here, but I want to transition to another area? What was going on inside of you? Do you remember? Because I had shared with you this season in my business where I'm like waking up, having more fun than I've had in 5.5 years. And what I said to you, and this is what kicked off the conversation, is, Jess, I remember, it's almost like God is reminding me, hey, Anita, do you remember that idea that I gave you, that dream that I put in your heart when you were like a teenager? And all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, you're right. Like it's always been there. I'm reimagining it. And then the next day I was doing the kind of same thing. I was extra, this is what I always do. Like I'll be walking and praying and God brings back my remembrance. And it was, the next day was like, hey, Anita, remember actually that dream I gave you when you were like 5 years old? And I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. So let's talk about that a little bit and give me your perspective on, just in your language, what that means to you and how do you frame that in your business and with your clients?
Yeah. So like I said, I had been building successful consulting practice and I'm like 18 years in now 12 years into the entrepreneurial side. And like I said, I got to this place where I just felt like there was an emptiness and I happened to be sitting at a conference and I had just come out of a business partnership and I was really trying to refigure out like, who am I as a person? Who am I as a business owner? What do I stand for? What do I want my business to be known for? And like I said, I was at this conference and I was sitting there thinking about business and being a force for good. And out of nowhere, I got this, I don't know, like just an epiphany. I don't know. Yeah. And it was like the phrase Egyptian Women's Entrepreneur Initiative popped into my head.
Okay.
And I thought, okay, that's interesting. And I sat with it for a while. I didn't do anything. I just sat with it. And I went back to my room and I was talking with two of my roommates, dear friends of mine, fellow entrepreneurs. And I said this and they both sat there stunned. And they were like, that makes so much sense. And that's where this idea of compartmentalization came from, because I grew up in the Middle East and lived in Egypt and then studied abroad, I'm Arabic and political science. Those are my majors. And I have a long history of being connected to the Middle East and Egypt in particular. And yet I had done nothing with it for 20 years. Since I graduated from college, I'd done nothing with it. And I thought, this is super interesting because that came out of just, whether it's God or whomever, right? Like it came out of this deep connection to my own past and like what God was placing on my heart. And so I started thinking more and more about how there are these moments where we have had these yearnings, these desires, these experiences that have shaped us uniquely for such a time as this. And what you were saying, you're like, oh, that was a dream I had. And then nothing came of it. And I always think if we look back, we can see that through line so perfectly. We have been prepared all along the way. And that launched me into a deep dive into getting back into learning Arabic. It helped me start to reach out to some women that I happen to know in Egypt and really just have kept the lines of communication over. It's not no one big thing has come from it, but it's been a sense of openness and a willingness to see what is this meant to be. And if nothing else, maybe it's not me that's doing the work. Maybe it's me in partnership with others. Maybe that's me financially in the business. There's just so many ways that we can do it. And I just think a lot of us have these, as you said, these God-sized ideas inside of us, and it feels like we should be doing something. And I think part of it is just having an awareness that this exists and an openness to God's perfect timing in that process, and not feeling like you have to force every little thing.
Oh yeah.
And so for me, that's how like the compartmentalization has happened over time, where it's like you look back at your life and you're like, oh, that was a thing I used to do. I don't do that anymore. But then it's that yearning pops right back to you. It doesn't quite let you go. And so for me, all of this has really manifested in this deep desire to help women in particular use their voices, because I have found myself in places where women's voices have been limited, and doing what I can to help them figure out what is that, in my vernacular, their big idea, and yours, their God-sized idea that needs to come forward. And is part of this larger mission that they have personally or professionally, and then figuring out what is the right mechanism to bring that idea forward. And for those business owners, a lot of times that often involves speaking or writing or just being incredibly visible and moving themselves into a space where they are a thought leader and leading that conversation around whatever that idea happened to be.
Oh, okay. I got a big question for you based on that. What would you say to somebody who's listening right now who feels that stirring inside of them, but they're like, I don't know how to communicate that way. I've never felt comfortable allowing my voice to be out in the world. It was never okay for me growing up to have a voice, or a voice that was validated, but I still have this desire inside of me to do the thing. How would you help somebody that might be in that spot where they're, again, like their heart's stirring right now, their heart, like their pulse is quickening, and then it's like, speaking, wait a minute. No, everybody told me I couldn't. Everybody told me I wasn't allowed to, or some other kind of lie. I'm just going to call it what it is. Some other kind of lie that's there. Like how would you just take a couple minutes, like coach somebody right now who might be so excited and terrified all at the same time about what to do next?
Yes, it's so common, right? Most of us have grown up in spaces where in some way, shape, or form, we have been told that we need to minimize our voice, or to not speak, or that our ideas aren't important. And gosh, okay, I was like taking notes as you were this idea. So the first thing I'll say is, I just want to validate that it's okay to feel that way. Using your voice, having an idea, putting those things out into the world is really scary. Especially right now, where it feels like no idea is safe. It doesn't matter what side of the political spectrum you're on. Nothing feels safe. And we are all living in this like elevated tension, right? And so I just want to acknowledge that exists, that discomfort. And for some people, that danger is real. And so there is a level of privilege here that is worth noting. So I want to say that off the bat.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I would say for those people who are starting to feel this, and the idea is sitting there, maybe it's not super clear, I would just encourage them to just start talking about it. And you don't have to get on a big stage to do that. You don't have to blast it all over social media. Grab a trusted friend, someone who can hear you, who knows your heart, and just speak the thing for the first time. And even if that's too scary, then write it for the first time.
I love it.
I just encourage people to take baby steps in this process. And one of the things that I think we glorify this idea of courage and boldness and bravery, but the reality is that courage feels terrible. It does not feel good. Like when you're doing something that requires you to be courageous, or to take courageous action, or puts you in a space where you're now feeling vulnerable, it does not feel good. But I can tell you that when you do it, it creates confidence that allows you to do it again, a little bigger every single time. And so I just encourage people to start small, find a trusted person. If you could put it on social media, if you felt like that was appropriate, you could write it in a journal, you could submit an article, you could, speak at your at a local group. There's just so many ways to do this.
Yeah.
But I do think if you're like feeling that fear, and there is something to that, that's almost like there's this urging. Like you and I were saying before we started recording, I do not believe that God puts ideas inside of us for us to do nothing.
Right.
And we don't have to force it, like I said, but that urging, that desire is not there for no reason. It's there because there's a larger need. And one of the things I often say to entrepreneurs, as cliche as it may seem, is these ideas that we have, if we had the cure to cancer, we would be shouting it from the mountaintops. We would be doing everything we could to help people. Your idea is the cure to someone's cancer.
Yeah, it is.
And so it almost feels criminal to not do the thing. So start small, just recognize it's going to feel uncomfortable. It's not going to feel great, but then you'll get through that temporary discomfort and you'll feel this little dose of confidence that gives you enough to allow you to keep doing it over and over until it becomes whatever it needs to be.
Yeah. Your brain starts to create an evidence file, doesn't it? Each time we do the thing that feels, here's a little trick. I'm super practical and tactical. When you're nervous or fearful, your body doesn't know the difference between fear and excitement. So even if you're nervous, by the way, for those of us that speak on stages and speak in large groups all the time, those feelings always come up. They actually don't go away. But I have learned to really lean into that and enjoy it, because I'm like, okay, I'm ready. Let's go. Let's go. I'm like the racehorse that's at the gate, right? Like I'm excited, but what you can do is you can tell yourself when you feel the anxiety or the fear welling up, oh no, I'm excited. And I say it out loud because it tells my body, informs my brain, these feelings that I have of excitement are the same feelings that I have of anxiety or fear. And so I just tell myself, no, I'm excited. And then over time, my mind's, oh, okay, this is what excitement feels like. And then you get on the stage or do the thing or just do the post or write it out or whatever. I also want to absolutely back up Jess and just echo what she was saying. Finding somebody who's trusted to start there is really powerful. Somebody who's not going to judge you, who's not going to naysay you and squish you down, who's not going to have the look on their face of, you're crazy, what you're talking about, or whatever. They might not understand, but when you're just starting out, finding somebody who could be a safe place. Maybe if you don't have anybody in your immediate life, maybe you go outside of that group and you find somebody there, but finding somebody who you can be safe with is really important, because it allows you to get those thoughts that are like stumbling around in your head and get them out, either get them out on paper, get them out of your mouth and that kind of stuff. And then as you do that, your brain hears your thoughts a little bit differently when you speak stuff out loud. I'm a homeschooling mom, so just teaching some things about how we learn right now. Can't help it. That's the way that works. Okay. So cool. And I love what you're talking about, Jess, because it's the baby steps, but it's also practical and tactical. It says, just start. Like just start doing the thing. And might not be amazing at first, but that's okay. The more you do it, just keep doing it and you'll get better. That's
and I can pretty much guarantee it won't be amazing at the very beginning, because it doesn't feel good. You're literally doing something that you've been told your whole life, don't do this, play small, keep it tight. And so that's where, like you said, having that trusted person. And one of the things I've noticed, and this is particularly true for entrepreneurs, like we are constantly having to do our own work to move forward, so much development work. And sometimes the people around us, the people that we would expect to be the most supportive, are not. And that's not because they don't love us, but they don't get it. And I'm saying that with all love, they just do not get the level of development and that's required to be an entrepreneur, because we are constantly living in a state of discomfort. We're constantly putting ourselves out there in ways that most people do not do. And so don't be surprised if sometimes the people that you think will support you, who will get this idea, who will know you the best, don't be surprised if they don't get it. And that is where your point, Anita, of going outside of that circle can actually be really helpful, because those people know you as who you are right now, as opposed to who you used to be, just from a growth perspective. So I think that's worth saying, because it can be really scary. And I just go back to, if this thing is creating this deep desire, this deep yearning. It's like your heart is exploding at the possibility. You can't help but do it.
Yeah.
And it's going to be scary, but it's going to be worth it.
Yeah. I'm so glad you just said that whole piece, because in my mind, I was thinking, ooh, like the daily journey as an entrepreneur is like that. It's like you get used to that. Ooh, all right, here we go again. It's a little bit uncomfortable. Man, I thought I was going to be good. I thought 6 months in, I'd got it, because that's what I was in my corporate career. If after the first 90 days, I'd be comfortable. And then 6 months, I'd be like, yeah, I got this. I'm rocking this job. The entrepreneurial world is not like that. You're constantly in a state. So the more that you can lean into that awareness, I have found, the more that you normalize the fact that we're always going to be in that mode of growing. Because if we're growing, then we're moving forward. And if not, if I'm staying stagnant, you can listen to like gobs of studies that talk about this. Really, if we're staying stagnant, and especially as an entrepreneur, we're actually always like falling off, dying off. Like it just doesn't really work out very well that way. And so that's part of the journey as an entrepreneur, isn't it? And then the other part is, because here's what's also fun. As an employee, I have a different set of language that I use versus an entrepreneur. And I don't mean versus one is better than the other, anything weird like that. What I'm saying is, when you start to get around a group of people, like-minded people that speak the same language, then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I found my people. This is cool. When I say my big idea, maybe this is not my household, but maybe you live in a household where you talk to your husband and your kids and they're like, I hear your words, honey, but I do not know what you're saying. It does not make any sense. So get yourself in a room, in environments where you can be around people like Jess and I, that we're talking about this kind of stuff, because all of a sudden you become so much more aware, and you get the support that you genuinely need. It doesn't matter if you're just first starting out or you're going through a growth period in your business. Like, you need other entrepreneurs that are like-minded entrepreneurs along the way. It's a different journey. I've talked to a lot of people that'll say, isn't the entrepreneurial journey lonely? I have totally experienced that, but I will also say it doesn't have to be.
Right.
It does not have to be, because there's a lot of amazing masterminds and groups that are out there that you could invest in yourself and invest in those relationships, and that would take you higher than you could possibly go all on your own. Yeah. Okay. I got off on some fun topics.
I know
they're off topic. I just want to correct myself there. Nothing weird. Okay. So let's talk about just like speaking in general. Like, I'm super excited to hear from you on this topic. So you're a genius, I'm told, when it comes to speaking, specifically around TEDx's, but I know that the skill of being an excellent speaker, one that can help people go through the transformation as they're hearing someone else speak their words. Like, it's so powerful. That's up in the levels. When there's wealth creation, there's actually 4 levels of wealth creation, and communication is in level 3. That's level 3 kind of work. So I'm really interested to hear what you have to say around this, because this can take us farther, faster than if we're just doing things on our own and pulling, just watering it down. So talk to us about speaking.
This is so funny. I'm literally just thinking about this for the first time. We were talking about compartmentalization.
Yeah.
And I started doing speaker coaching at TEDx Breckenridge in 2020.
Okay.
And when a colleague of mine asked me to be a part of that team, she said, what are your thoughts on being a TEDx speaker coach? And I said, I don't know. I mean, I've never been a TEDx speaker coach. I've never done a TED talk. I don't actually have a desire to do it. It's not the right format for me.
Right.
And she was like, okay, but you're a speaker.
Yeah.
You've been a coach for many years.
Yeah.
I think you could, and you've listened to a lot of TED talks. I think you've got this.
Okay.
So I took a leap of faith, and I went down the rabbit hole, and I was like, oh, this is super interesting. And I started looking back in my own career for evidence like that I could do this. Mm-hmm. And I realized that, like, back in my corporate days, I had essentially coached hundreds of executives in preparation for speaking modules that they were delivering. But I had put that in a box, and that was back in my corporate days. That's not what I do now.
Yeah.
So that's just a great example of how we have these experiences along the way that are relevant to the thing that we're trying to do. So when it comes to speaking, the work I do is 2 pieces. The first is, what is the big idea? I have a unique ability to be able to listen to a person and hear sort of the subtext of what they're talking about. Most of the people I'm working with are incredibly smart women.
Mhm.
These are true experts in their field.
Yeah.
And because of that expertise, they struggle to really cull it down into something that they can use.
Yeah.
And this is a great problem to have because it's okay,
Yeah.
I'm an expert, but like, how do I frame all of this rich expertise that took me decades to learn?
Literally.
How do I do something with this?
Love
And
it.
I work with clients one-on-one to dig into and get to the other side of what is their big idea.
Nice.
And that really came as a result of the work I had been doing with TEDx, because as you likely know, TEDx is all about ideas and the spread of ideas. And I really fell in love with the idea that everyone has a big idea inside them.
Ooh,
now,
nice.
what that looks like varies from person to person.
Oh,
For
yeah.
some, that's a local family kind of idea. For others, it's a big global idea, but we all have ideas, yearnings, et cetera, that were put on our hearts. So part one is really about taking people through a very robust process to help them figure out what is their big idea and how can they use that, especially as an entrepreneur, how can you use that in the context of your business?
Okay.
And I think of it as a very foundational piece. If you don't know what your big idea is and the heartbeat of your business, you're really going to struggle, because this is the thing that is the differentiator between you and someone who does similar type work. And so that's part one. Part two is all about, now that we know what the big idea is, where do we speak it? What are the right platforms where we need to use it as a tool for increasing visibility? How do we frame it so that it can be received by the people it's intended for?
Nice.
And some of that is born out of my own experience, where I was talking a lot about social impact and talking to social impact entrepreneurs. And they were like, they didn't know I was talking to them. And I had that realization. And so part of the work we do is really digging into who is the intended audience? How do we need to frame this in such a way that they can receive it? And where are the places that they can hear it?
Nice.
And then building out whatever that messaging happens to look like. So for some people, that is like full keynotes. For others, maybe that's going through the TEDx process from application to getting on stage. For others, it's through written text. So there's a whole variety of ways that I lump speaking under, because to me, it's really about how are we speaking or putting our big idea out into the world? And are we doing it in the way and in the ways that it can be received best, so that we get to create the impact that we're really looking for.
I love that. I love that. Because think of how many people, especially these days, are just talking.
Yes.
Let me like narrow that category down. People that have a heart to help, but they're just talking and they're confusing their prospects. And we'll say, like in my space, a confused mind is never going to buy.
Totally.
They can't, if you could be an expert in, I don't know, neuroscience. I'll use one that I hear a lot. I see these emails now in neuropathy. I don't exactly know what this is, but I get these emails and I'm like, I don't think I have that because I don't know anything about it. So I'm obviously not their target market because I don't know anything about this word neuropathy or whatever. But can you imagine how somebody's an expert in a space and they're communicating out in a way, and the audience is, I don't even know that word. I don't know what it means. Is it a skin condition? But being able to help us as socially responsible entrepreneurs that have an idea inside of us that's big enough, bigger than us, that we have a moral obligation to be able to get out into the world, be able to communicate in a clear and concise manner so that we can actually help somebody. I like to say we can just help somebody just take that next one step. Whatever that next right step of integrity is, let's go ahead and take that. Like, you don't have to be overwhelmed. It doesn't have to be 1,200 steps or anything like that. Just whatever your next one step of integrity is, go ahead and take that. So I love that. I love that. Because isn't that actually meets our clients more where they're at than anything else?
Absolutely.
It's helping people while they're on their journey. You have Zig Ziglar who said, you could, if you just help enough other people, then help them get what they want, then you'll get what you want. And I love that because it's really like this servant's heart that so many of us as entrepreneurs have, that say, I want to be able to champion others and watch them rise up. And then as I do that, then I rise up. But my priority is them first. And so see how beautiful that is when we have that kind of relationship instead of the opposite, what we've seen in the marketplace a lot is I just want to put myself up on the top and I'm not judging or knocking anybody. I'm just saying, like, for me and for my business, for the clients that I work with, it's just not what we're about, because at some point the inauthenticity of that shows through. And I guess for me, I don't want to attract people like that. Like, those aren't my people. So I am repelled by all of that anyways. Yeah.
And I think if we think about the big idea, if we think about the work, if we think about that sort of missional component, when we're talking about that, and we're talking about it in terms that the people that we want to attract can hear, it makes the sales process that much easier, right? Because you're talking to the right people. And when all of that is coupled with this deep desire to use the business for good, to be a change maker in whatever space we happen to be. And I know some people get scared about that word, but like when we're out there speaking and challenging the status quo, that is effectively what we become, change makers.
Yeah.
And so that just, again, extends that idea of being in that servant-hearted space, because people know, especially if they've been following you for long enough, that this is not just about making money. Yes, they can all appreciate you running a business, but at the end of the day, they're like, how can I be part of something that is bigger than myself? How can this person help me do the thing that's going to allow me to create impact in the world? And that is where the real magic happens. And it starts with really being able to understand what is that idea, and being confident enough and willing to be uncomfortable enough to take that first step.
Yeah.
And once you do that, it's this beautiful ripple just continues to flow.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And like all good marketing should both equally attract our right fit clients and repel the people that we're not supposed to work with all at the same time. And can you imagine, maybe somebody's listening right now and thinking, like, when you're messaging your big promise, your messaging, your heart, like when all that shows through in any speaking opportunity that you have, if you listen to what Jess is talking about, as I should be able to do all of those things in any one message. It could be the shortest little reel, or a little piece that I put on TikTok, or the biggest, maybe I have hours or something like that to speak, and anywhere in between. But being able to clearly and concisely deliver our messaging, that's actually what serves our audience the best, is because then we're blessing them with something that they weren't aware of before, helping them take their next step. And then we walk away going, okay, actually, I did my job. I did my work well. So I would say, I don't know, maybe you can confirm this, if this is when I show up to a speaking event and I do those things and I do them well, I'm prepared, I know my messaging is spot on, I actually walk away from the event going, oh, I served the people. Absolutely. I served them at the highest possible level, and I know that I did well. And so then whatever the spoils and the riches come from that activity are what it's supposed to be, as opposed to, like weird, needy energy, or just so anxious, so scared that you can't say the right things or whatever. But so I'm sure you coach people through that whole process. It's super exciting.
But I absolutely echo what you're saying. Showing up in that way and doing it not because you're selling or whatever it is. I'm here to deliver this message because I feel called to be the person who's doing it.
Yeah. I'm here to serve. Thing. Yep, I'm here to serve. Awesome. Okay, Jess, as we get towards the tail end of our show, is there one last little bit of nugget? You've given us so much wisdom and so much fire today. I'm just so excited to be able to publish this episode. But any last things that you want to share with the audience as we're wrapping up here?
Yeah, one question that I think I'll leave your audience with is to ponder, is what in the world would change if you said what you wanted to say?
That's good.
What in the world would change if you said what you wanted to say?
That's really powerful. I love that. I love that. So what in the world would change if we said what we're supposed to say? Yeah. So good. Maybe jot that down if you're not driving.
Yes, please be safe.
Yes. Okay. And how can people reach out to you and connect with you?
I'm primarily on LinkedIn. I'm at Jess-Sato over there. I'm on Instagram, Jessica Sato Coach. And then, of course, on my website, jessicasato.com. There's loads of ways to help you think about your big idea, figure out your big idea, test your big idea over there. So if you're at the beginning and you're like, I feel that urge, there's tons of stuff there to help you get started on that process. Baby steps is the way to
Awesome.
go.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. We'll make sure and put all that in the show notes. So, Jess, thank you so much. I just want to honor you for what you're doing. The way that you're showing up and serving women today is so powerful and so beautiful. So, I just want to thank you, even though I'm not speaking into your audience right now. I just want to publicly acknowledge what you're doing, the work that you've done inside, and how, because of doing that hard work inside, you're actually changing lives all over the place, literally by the probably hundreds of thousands. So I just want to thank you so much for who you are and where you are on your journey, and just for sharing your story with us today and helping other people take a step forward.
Thank you. I received that. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. You're so welcome. Okay. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.